Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? As you regular viewers will know, this is an international panel show. And we have today, I never know who's going to come, but today we have David from New York. Welcome, David. Thank you for coming. You're a regular. But we also have new boy, Paul, from England, just down the road from where I live. About, I don't know, an hour and a half's drive. So welcome, Paul.
Excuse my background. I've been exiled to what used to be my daughter's bedroom, and you can see her bunk bed behind me.
Okay, right. Well, you could have fooled me. You could have said that was your green screen chosen picture.
Yeah, I could, but
and I wouldn't have been able to tell. Anyway, here we go with the items of the news. Those of you who watched our shows in the last couple of weeks will know that in Germany, Mannheim in Germany, there was a horrific incident a couple of weeks back when an Islamic stabber killed a policeman and attempted to kill an atheist activist. I think that person is recovering, and got shot himself. And today, well, actually a couple of days ago, the emergency workers in that town in Germany walked a heart with an R in it because his name was Reuven. And it's rather poignant. Let me show you the video. It's here somewhere. Yeah, it's this one. There you go. I think that's a lovely tribute from his colleagues.
a very moving tribute, I think.
Yeah,
very beautiful.
You
know,
if only we could stop the need to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So one of the problems in Gaza at the moment is civilians, because we've got two warring factions, Israel and Hamas. But the majority of the population, the ordinary Palestinians, who, let's face it, they didn't vote. Well, they didn't democratically they didn't democratically elect Hamas. They were coerced into selecting that.
And Hamas, after they took power, didn't hold any more elections.
No, that's right. Yeah, they turned the world into their own desire.
Caliphate.
So in the meantime, the poor civilians are caught between these two sides.
Yeah.
And they don't often get a chance to voice their opinions. But we're going to give one that chance right now.
الشعب كله مدني وحمد العالم انه احنا وحوش واسود احنا ولا حاجه اولادنا ماتوا حياتنا كلها اتدمرت رجعتونا 500 سنه لورا وحطونا في حلم الدوله اللي كله كذب وكذب احنا قاعدين بنموت.
I hope he doesn't get punished, but he was saying that Hamas has taken them 500 years back. Yeah.
That has to be the hope for him, doesn't it? That they don't pick on the fact that he's been broadcast around the world as a meme and punish him for it.
You have to be quite brave to do that, don't you?
I think so. I read that there were small demonstrations against Hamas among people in Gaza. I mean, according to the opinion polls you read, Hamas still have a lot of support among Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. But some of the people in Gaza must be cursing them for bringing this down on their heads, surely.
Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
David, do you want to have a contribution to this?
It is one of the saddest yet in some ways most predictable outcomes to religious violence or ethno-religious violence, to see these two groups of people yet again plunge the world's attention towards the ugliness of each side dehumanizing each other when the population just wants to live in peace. There are Israelis who reject their government. There are Israelis and Palestinians who do work for peace. It is their elected leaders or their de facto governments which are choosing this violence.
That's right. And they're only doing it to appease their extremists, because that's where their electorate is.
I think in the Israeli-Palestinian dispute, the extremists have been calling the shots for a long time, haven't they?
On both sides.
Probably since the assassination of Rabin. I think that was probably the key moment.
Shot in the back by an Israeli doctor.
What a successful assassination. I mean, he did it to destroy the peace process, and the peace process is absolutely shattered at the moment.
Ruined.
I mean, even right now, you have the U.S.-backed, UN-backed peace initiative that's on the table that Israel has accepted, the Arab states have accepted, everybody has accepted except for Hamas.
Yes.
And it's more valuable for them, almost in a very Orwellian sense, war is peace for these people, because this is how they control the masses.
Well, we're not going to stop that tonight, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's spilled, hasn't it? It's spilled over to Western cities. And I'm going to show you an example of this right now, where pro-Palestinian protesters and activists set off smoke bombs and flares as they tried to surround the White House. Not that one.
That's the wrong one. That's the Danish.
This one.
Network stands here today, along with all of those of consciousness and of humanity, and all who demand the red line for Biden and his administration, and to demand a stop to the genocide they are inflicting on Palestine with their Zionist partners.
Fuck the police. I mean, these people are ill-informed. They are simplistic, looking for a black hat or a white hat. You're not going to catch me supporting either side. They're both despicable and not admirable.
I think what a lot of people on the left don't know, and really don't know, is yes, the foundation of Israel was based on the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, but also the largest community in Israel is Jews who were ethnically cleansed from Arab countries after the foundation of Israel, or the descendants of these people. And these people have got nowhere else to go, literally. They can't go home back to the Arab countries that they were kicked out of. And they are never, ever going to trust their security to Arabs.
No.
And, you know, the idea that Palestine should be free from the river to the sea, well, no. It's not going to happen. The only possible solution is a two-state solution. And unfortunately, Hamas and Netanyahu have devoted the last couple of decades to preventing that.
Yes. Well, Netanyahu would be jailed if he lost, wouldn't he?
He would, for corruption.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably reached the stage where he won't be able to travel anywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
Because he'd be arrested if he did.
Yeah.
For war crimes.
Yeah.
It's an appalling situation.
Yeah.
I mean,
when
the third Intifada started, my daughter said to me, "How long's this going to last, Dad?" And I said, about 50 years.
Yeah.
Well, to an extent, it's been going for 2000 so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, there have been times in, I don't like to call it the Middle East. I like to call it the Muddle East, because they've been muddling along with this for thousands of years.
Yeah.
That they've gotten along, that both sides have gotten along in trade and have lived in coexistence for generations. You know, regarding this Washington protest, you know, people have a constitutionally protected right to freely assemble. So I don't begrudge any group for protesting at the White House. When Trump was in office, there were a lot of civil rights groups that protested him. The difference is, of course, is that, you know, Trump's hooligans would clean them all out and wave a Bible around to clear a path.
Yeah.
And the Biden administration is letting these people freely assemble. On the right, you have the insanity of the January 6th insurrection.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, you might look at these people and say, oh, they're wrong, or, you know, they're misguided or whatever. I don't care if they want to protest. That's their right. Even if they say things despicable like "fuck the police," which in itself is just disgusting, because all these guys are doing is trying to keep order and stopping people from getting hurt. Nobody's taking batons to these people. There are no fire hoses. Nobody's being arrested. And so the police, I think, showed incredible restraint here, as they're trained to do, you know.
Another thing you have in the States is the Christian Zionists, isn't it? I watched a documentary, I think it was on either BBC or Channel 4 in the UK recently, about the Christian Zionists. And these are people who actually want the situation in the Middle East to get worse.
Yes.
To bring Jesus back.
Prophecy.
Yes.
And, you know, the thought that if Trump gets re-elected, these people could have influence in the White House.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
Yeah,
But
I mean, they've already martyred Trump. You know, they've given him godlike qualities.
Yeah.
You know, when he was finally convicted of these 34 felons, one of the first things that the religious right did was said, "Well, we know somebody else who was
Yes.
convicted."
Yes.
And so they're equating this guy who, in every case, is so antithetical to what their religion says, right? You know, to the idea of literally bringing around it, like in the Bill Maher film, Religulous. These people, I don't know if you have this quote or the saying in the UK, jonesing for a fight. They're ready for Armageddon. They're pleading for Armageddon.
But
and that's very dangerous.
The American Christians are so not unified themselves, aren't they? There's a whole field of American Christians that are sympathetic towards the Jews because they see a lot of commonality between the Holy Land, the Bible, the whole story of the thing. So who knows where they're coming from? They're certainly not monolithic.
No.
Yep.
Meanwhile, as I said earlier, this is being exported. That was America. But in Denmark, a Danish right-wing politician was being confronted by a Pakistani Muslim. Watch this.
Vi får 5 børn, I får 1 og 2. Om 10-15 år, så er der flere pakker, end der er danskere i det her land. Ja, Rasmus. Fød lidt børn, mand. Jeg er lige blevet gift. Jeg skal også have 5 børn i morgen. Gå og fød flere børn, mand. Danskerne er 5 millioner, I bliver snart udryddet, mand. Kig på svenskerne, kig på nordmændene, kig på finnerne, mand. Vi er flere millioner, mand. I er i et samfund, der ikke laver, I ligger og boller dyr. Det er derfor, I ikke har fået børn, mand. Har du brødre? Har du søstre? Har du brødre eller søstre? Har du brødre eller søstre? Har du brødre eller søstre, mand? De forældre, de knæppe dyr, mand. Det er derfor, de ikke knæppe hinanden. De kunne give dig en bror og en søster, mand. Vi er kun 5 millioner, I bliver aldrig mere, mand. I skal fucking skamme.
Hvor er søsteren igen? Hvor er søsteren lige om lidt? Lille luder. Men de mor kommer igen. Hvor er søster? Søster! Ikke en brønd. De dansker svin.
Danmark og danskere.
Fuck de mor, mand.
Det er ikke Danmark, det er Perkerland.
Det er Perkerland.
Altså, hvorfor skal jeg tilføje noget? Det er klart, hvad fanden forholder sig.
Det er Perkerland, det her. Norge er slat.
Så er det kun for Perker.
Du får Perker på godt det. Norge er slat, mand.
Lad, hvad fuck er du, mand? Lad fuck også, det var skide på.
Do you want that culture in your society? Can you wonder that the right in Europe is rising and saying, go home?
You've got the two extremes feeding off each other, haven't you?
Yeah.
It's a classic case where those Muslims are recruiting sergeants for the extreme right in Denmark, and the extreme right in Denmark are recruiting sergeants for the extreme Islamists in the country.
Yeah.
And it's just round and round and round, and they feed off each other. And I find the whole thing terribly depressing and frightening.
I was lucky in that I was born just at the end of World War II. And there really was a feeling of peace and love after we had sorted out Hitler. You know, there was unification. You could go hitchhiking in Europe, and if you had a Union Jack on your rucksack, you'd be given lifts and everybody would be friendly towards you. Where has all this hatred come from?
It's a big challenge for our societies, isn't it? It's a big challenge for the USA. It's a big challenge for Europe. Immigration is not going away. You've got the pull factors and the push factors that are leading to more and more immigration. And governments, our government in Britain has been trying for 10 years to reduce immigration. They haven't succeeded at all. And I don't know how they're going to succeed.
No.
I mean,
It's a very big problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think that as Paul rightly said, you have these two extremes who suck up all the air in the room, because I think most people who immigrate tend to assimilate, and aren't looking for a fight and aren't looking to punch somebody in the nose.
Yeah.
And when you have, like in the United States, you have these nativists. They're not even nationalists. There's a difference between being a nationalist and being a nativist. These people are being nativistic, not nationalistic, saying anybody who doesn't meet their qualification for citizenship, which is purely white or whatever, shouldn't be here, against these people who are, equally, some of them, not all, equally violent in their expression as well. And they're taunting each other.
Yeah.
And, it's very sad and it's very dangerous. In the United States, you have the same thing with the neo-Nazis and the KKK. And in the United States, every ethnic group that has come through the United States has been at the bottom of the ladder, both in terms of access to services, access to everything, access to education, and eventually they move up that scale, or at least that's what it has been. So every group has their violence upon them. Sadly, these guys. I mean, if you look at the makeup of the people who are being violent towards each other, it's 20-year-old, 25-year-old guys on either side screaming at each other. That's as much impulse control and lack of brain development from an evolutionary point of view.
social evolutionary.
Yeah. So, I mean, there used to be this saying, don't trust anybody over 30, until I got to 30 and I realized, you know what, I don't trust anybody under 30.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, sadly, we can't even trust the United Nations now, because the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, for Palestinians in the Near East, has been disgraced for collaborating with Hamas. And this has reached such a peak of importance that there was a speech delivered at the US Congress urging the US to stop funding that agency. I'm not going to show you a video of that because it goes on too long, but there was, very eloquent speaking going on about, stop giving them $300 million a year for joining Hamas effectively.
For me, there's a big question of why are these people still called refugees? They are the descendants of people who were ethnically cleansed in 1948.
Yes.
And they founded towns and cities in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, etc.
Yes.
And these places are still called refugee camps.
Yes.
Why are they called refugee camps? The Jews who were kicked out of Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Egypt, they came to Israel. The places they live in are not called refugee camps.
No. And
they're
the
called
Jews,
towns, cities, and villages.
That's right.
What are the United Nations doing there?
Yes, it's ridiculous. And the Jews were kicked out from a lot of North African states as well. Yeah.
And I often say to people when I've worked with Arabs a lot. And when I work with them, I become really Zionist. And I've got a Zionist sister-in-law. And when I speak with her, I feel really pro-Palestinian.
Yes.
And it kind of depends who I'm with. But you know, in the late 1940s, there were wave after wave after wave of ethnic cleansing. There were Germans who were ethnically cleansed from all of Eastern Europe, from Poland. There were Poles who were ethnically cleansed from the Soviet Union. There were Ukrainians who were ethnically cleansed from Poland.
And
there
if we
were
want
the Pieds Noirs from Algeria. There were the Jews from all over the Arab world to Israel. The Jews
from the Ottoman Empire as well. There was
and none of these talk about reversing that wave of ethnic cleansing.
No.
It's all accepted as a fait accompli, and we just have to get on with it.
Yeah.
Apart
David,
from one.
I should tell you, David, that Paul he's retired now, but he was the owner of a language school.
Wonderful.
So he's got a foot in many of these camps.
I have. I taught a really charming young man. I really liked him. He was the son of a senior Fatah leader in the West Bank. And he was such a nice guy. And I said to him one day, what's going to happen in the end between the Israelis and the Palestinians? And he just said, we're going to win. We're going to outbreed them.
Yeah.
Well, that was Fatah. He wasn't Hamas. He was Fatah.
Yeah. And that's just what the video I showed. That's the same policy.
Right.
The same.
Outbreeding.
You know, Paul, as you were saying before, depending on who you're with, you're taking either side. It's because you have been cursed with reason and a well-informed point of view. Because typically, when people say Israel or Palestine, they are adamant on one side or the other.
Yeah. Dogmatic fundamentalists.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have some lighter items to discuss.
Thank goodness.
Yes, I know. So you'll like this one because Pope Francis, who you may remember a couple of weeks ago, offended a lot of his priests who are gay by saying we don't want any more faggotry. He used the Italian word for that. In the seminaries, he's okay with having LGBTQ++ as members of the religion, but he doesn't want them as officials in the religion. And he had to apologize for that a couple of weeks ago. But the news is he's done it again. On Tuesday, in a closed door meeting with, what were they? Bishops? Yeah, Italian bishops. And he used the same language derogatory language about gay men, and said that they should not be allowed to enter the seminary. And the thing is that his press officer, Matteo Bruni, is trying to cover up. He keeps saying the Pope didn't mean to say that. He's apologizing. And so the thing is that historically, the papacy, the Vatican, officially had the doctrine not to admit to the seminary or to holy orders those who practice homosexuality, who present deep-seated homosexual tendencies or support gay culture. And that's been sort of on the statute of RC since 2005. And in 2016, Pope Francis upheld that position. So he's got a problem now because he's alienating most of his workers, most of his subordinates.
Yeah.
I think it's funny.
Yeah, well, you know, I had the good fortune to work at St. Peter's College, which is now St. Peter's University, which was a Jesuit school. And I'd say half the priests who worked there, whether they were in the seminary or they were teaching courses, I'd say half were gay, were gay men, and the other half, you know, just didn't know how to talk to women.
that includes me.
And the gay priests were some of the most delightful, fun, interesting, kind people I had ever met, who in some cases I'm still friends with many of them.
Yeah.
But they can't come out, but everybody knows,
Yeah.
even amongst the priesthood, who
Yeah.
who is and who isn't.
Yeah.
When I was principal of a language school in Brighton, one of our best host families was a gay Catholic priest and his partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they were genuinely lovely people, and very good host families. Students loved them,
Mm-hmm.
who we put with them. And it always struck me as funny that this Catholic priest was allowed to live with his partner, and it was fine. If it had been a woman, they wouldn't have been able to live together.
Right, exactly. This is how wacky Roman Catholicism is, just in general. Because and I think a lot of it is, the outcome of that is all this intergenerational sexual abuse of children, because they can't.
Yeah, we're coming to that. Sorry, we're coming to that.
Oh, okay, then I'll stop now.
Yeah. Well, I love it because any embarrassing situations that are caused by the doctrine of some of these religious officials amuses me. I love that. Do more of it.
Do you remember, John, our blessed Prime Minister that we used to have, Boris Johnson?
Yes.
Got married for the third time.
Yes.
And he was married in a Catholic cathedral.
Yes.
It was his third marriage.
Yes.
And the Catholic Church allowed this because his other marriages had been in Protestant churches.
Yes, so they don't count. Yes. That was brilliant, wasn't it? Yes.
And I thought, the Catholic Church, what a bunch of hypocrites.
Yes, absolutely.
To allow this. The second thing, Boris Johnson being willing to declare his children from his previous marriages illegitimate.
Yes.
In order to do this. I mean, apparently they don't speak to him.
Wow.
Well, would you? No, I wouldn't.
Would you?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's not just the Roman Catholics, I'm afraid, because Southern Baptists, they've been trying to pass a bill to change their constitution to make it explicitly state that only men can be any kind of pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, that vote failed narrowly because they required a 2/3 threshold, and they got to 61.45% in favor. Nevertheless, you can't be a female pastor in the Southern Baptist affiliated churches.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this meant that several churches that previously were in the umbrella of Southern Baptists left, especially some from the American African churches.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had all manner of dispute going on for some time about this, because back in 2023, they succeeded in supporting an amendment about this, no female pastors, because they said that would mean that the Southern Baptist Church holds the Bible's teachings and our convention's beliefs. But this time, they didn't get the support they wanted. Meanwhile, they've already expelled, effectively, a church called the Saddleback Church, because it had women preachers, and so that was disaffiliated. And there's another church in North Carolina. That was in Kentucky, the first one, but this one's in North Carolina, same Bible Belt area. And so they have been disaffiliated as well. And this is because the Southern Baptists think of women and men as not equal, effectively.
Mhm.
They think of them in terms of complementarianism, which means they have complementary roles in the church and the home. In other
You can
words,
kind of guess what those roles might be, Mike.
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, yes. Men are superior, women are subordinate.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. Well spotted. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think who was the physicist? Freeman Dyson. I think he was British, right?
Uh-huh.
He said that all religion is basically literature, and and I tend to agree with him. That is, he doesn't even consider, or he didn't even consider, theology as actually any part of philosophy. He thought that all religion was just literature.
Yeah.
And when you look at it through that lens, you realize whatever the Abrahamic faith is, or whatever somebody's trying to sell you from any other faith tradition, that it's all about a bad book that somebody read
Yes, yes, yes.
and they base their life on it.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book at the moment by a guy called Stephen Tiger, who's an American. Not quite an atheist, almost an atheist, I think I'd call him. And the book's called Doctrine Impossible. And what he's saying is that fundamentalist Christians don't worship God, they worship the Bible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And because they believe that the Bible is true, literally true all the time, the God that they thereby worship is a monster.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's the monster who said, "Go kill the Amalekites," and
Mhm.
so forth.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And he says, "This is blasphemy
Mhm.
to put the Bible above God, as these people do." And even someone like William Lane Craig, who you think of as, he's a clever man,
Yeah.
and he will say, "No, these genocides were justified.
Oh,
God had every reason for doing these genocides." And
as if genocide can ever be justified.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like how are we to judge God's will?
yeah,
That's
it.
it's the same thing when you say, brain cancer in 2-year-olds. We don't know it's part of God's plan. I mean, it's just so bankrupt.
Apparently, my grandmother, she lost a child, a 9-year-old child,
Mhm.
to sepsis. I think essentially to sepsis.
Mm.
It was before there were antibiotics,
Yeah.
and the Catholic priest said to her, "It's all part of God's plan."
Yeah.
And my grandmother never went to church again.
No. What sort of a God is that plans for your child to die?
I don't think she stopped believing, but she was it. She wasn't going to worship that God.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the only word I can think of it is a bankrupt.
Yeah.
All of it.
Well, the Freeman Dyson, is that the person you quoted? Yeah.
Mhm.
He's not the only person that thinks that theology is a non-academic subject, because Richard Dawkins thinks that too. Although I disagree. I think it depends on the type of theology, because if you include people like Francesca Stavrakopoulou, she's an atheist theologist, and she's just studying it as a weird type of philosophy.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think
look.
if you do a theology degree at a British university, it is a proper academic subject.
Yes.
If you do it at a Southern Baptist college,
yes,
I'm not sure.
It's just pure indoctrination. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Oh yeah. No. I mean, look. Even if Freeman Dyson says it's just literature, you can study academic. You can study literature academically.
Yeah. Just don't call it theology. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So we're staying with America, I'm afraid.
Oh.
And this time it's the Catholics. It's the Catholic bishops who have recently offered an apology to Native Americans. They did that this Friday, just gone, because of the church's role in inflicting trauma on their communities. And it's horrifying what they did. This was part of the school system, government-sponsored boarding schools created in the 19th century, which lasted for 150 years, during which native children were removed from their homes, forbidden to speak their own languages, given new English names, and then subjected to physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. But fortunately, the bishops have recently said, we apologize.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is, it's just not just North. It would be horrible if it was just North America, but it was all through South and Central America as well.
Yeah.
The last time I was in Ecuador.
And Canada and Ireland.
Yes. Where
And
it's
Australia.
like it's terrible. All of the churches that are built in South America, the Catholic churches, were built by laborers who were treated like slaves.
Yes.
By the Catholic Church. So the children are being abused, and their parents are being abused as well by these organizations. I mean, when you want to talk about the inhumanity of it, for an organization that's supposed to say we preach love and acceptance, and here's the good news, here's the word, and oh yeah, by the way, we're going to rape your child and put you in service to build our cathedrals, which and all the gold that has been found in your country will be laced into the walls, which now we own.
Oh, such hypocrisy.
We can go on.
Yeah.
I thought you said this was going to be happier things.
Yeah. Well, I've got one coming up because the Pope has hosted a conclave of comedians. He invited Whoopi Goldberg, Jimmy Fallon, Chris Rock, Stephen Colbert, Conan O'Brien, and others to Rome, to the Vatican. And he cracked jokes with them, saying, please pray for me, not against me.
Yeah.
I mean, he thinks that's a joke. It's pretty pathetic in my book, but that's what counts in his. He says, a sense of humor lifts you up. It shows that your life is short, and to take things in the spirit of the Redeemer. It's a human attribute closest to God's grace.
If you read The Name of the Rose, one of the things he goes on about is debates in the medieval Catholic Church over whether or not Jesus had a sense of humor. Because there's one, I think, on this rock I will build my church. Was that a joke? Was he making a pun on Peter's name?
Oh, Peter Rock, yes.
Yeah, and it has in The Name of the Rose great debates they were having in the medieval Catholic Church. Did Jesus ever laugh?
Well, did Jesus ever exist? That would be a starting point.
Well, it only shows you how, all of these organizations are begging to be accepted by the secular world. The secular world doesn't really need any church or anything like that. But, we've got to pull in these people who are really the voices of so many people who live in very secular peace, comedians. I mean, for goodness sake, if anything, comedians show that you don't need religion.
Yeah. And they're all left wing, pretty much. Yeah. I strongly admire comedians because they know how we think. They can touch our funny buttons.
Right.
That's a real skill.
Right.
And I've got a joke. I
wonder if Dave Allen ever got invited to the Vatican.
Who's that?
I don't know if you know Dave Allen, David.
No.
Oh, Dave Allen, yeah. What I'm shocked is, who wasn't there? Ricky Gervais.
Yes. Yeah. I think he was blackballed. Anyway, there is, I don't know how funny this is, but there's an old story that went, an Arab Muslim got in a taxi in London, and he said to the taxi driver, because I think the taxi driver was an immigrant. So he said, brother, please turn off the radio because music is haram, especially Western music, which is the music of the disbelievers and did not exist in the era of Muhammad. So the driver turned off the radio, but then he stopped the taxi and opened the door. And the Arab Muslim said, brother, what are you doing? The driver said, in the era of Muhammad, there was no taxi, there were no bombs, no loudspeakers in the mosques, no suicide bombers, no AK-47s, so shut up, get out and wait for your camel. But the punchline to that is this. Look.
She don't wanna fuck with rejects. I'm in the season, blow like breeze. I don't care if you think you're famous. Meet in Greece, I'll show you the greed. That's literally actually.
Bloody hell, they're taking over London with camels, and they're not even double-decker camels. Come on.
One-hung camels.
Oh, what a state the world is in, eh? Guys, thank you very much. We can't put it to rights tonight, but I've enjoyed this. I hope you have too.
Yes.
Very
Paul,
much.
it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, David. Cheers.
Great. Let's do it again another time.
Okay. Fair enough. Be well.
Okay.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Russia was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Kalimun drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys?